Hello, I am Dr. Denise Boston, Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Walden University. I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk to Dr. Sonja Santelises, CEO of Baltimore City Schools. We are here today to discuss her experience in Baltimore City and to celebrate Black History Month. Welcome, Dr. Santelises.
Thank you.
It's really a pleasure to meet you. And we have a great opportunity to have a conversation today.
Wonderful.
So the first question I want to pose to you is this. You've had an amazing career as an educator, an academic, and an administrator. What chartered your pathway to success?
So I think, Denise, when I think of kind of what set my path in motion, it really was my early years. Like a lot of people, I think it was a family that took education seriously. I think my faith has spurred me to kind of realize that it's about giving back and about community health and communities prospering. And also realizing the connection between education and really kind of long-term health of the country, of African Americans who have viewed education as a major lever in bettering their lives, and the fact that I've always loved learning. Now what's interesting is, I had a chalkboard growing up, and my mother used to say early on that she should have known when she couldn't get me to put the chalkboard away that I was going to go in education. But that was not her original plan, so to speak. But really, I think it was that root, the family, faith, and just a real sense of a love for learning. And I've always loved learning and learning new things. So I think that's the fit.
Wow. And so as you were growing up, did you have any mentors that guided you, that you looked up to?
Well, and I come from an extended family of educators. So neither of my parents are educators, but I have aunts and uncles who've taught at university level, at Jackson State and Tougaloo, but then I also have aunts and uncles who taught middle school math, and were principals at a high school. So that kind of early orientation to school as an essential part of what we do was there, and so I clearly look to all of them. But I remember the first time I saw, I think it was a television special on Marva Collins, and I remember at that point thinking, oh my God, that's what I want to do. And she was, for me, at that age, just seeing an African American woman who was knowledgeable and transferred that knowledge into a classroom setting, for me was such, I remember watching the movie.
And I remember reading Marva Collins' book.
Yes,
That's right.
That's right.
What a trailblazer she was.
She really was, and in a lot of ways, just set a lot in motion for what I call kind of my generation's real push for academic excellence. And when you take her in the period in which she was educating, she was doing something that people really questioned whether could actually occur for young African American children, and particularly in places like the West Side of Chicago. And so, that part of her story, and the fact that she founded her own school. So in some ways, my career path is an anomaly, because I always thought, oh no, I would start schools outside of public schooling. I really, believe it or not, and a lot of people don't know that, I actually did some of my early work as a way of what was ultimately going to be my goal, which was to start my own school. So this actually is kind of an ironic path trajectory, because I always thought, who would want to be in a school system? Who would want to run this large bureaucracy? And then lo and behold, I find myself, sitting in that seat. So.
And just as Marva Collins did, she worked with urban children in Chicago. You came out of Boston, is that correct?
That's right. So, but I actually, so my career started in Bedford-Stuyvesant in New York.
Okay.
So I started in Bed-Stuy. My early teaching experiences was part of a team that founded a school in Bedford-Stuyvesant. So really, I, for lack of a better term, cut my teeth in teaching in New York City.
Yes.
And it was after I left New York City to go to graduate school that then I began working in Boston Public Schools. I grew up north of Boston, so it was almost a homecoming of sort.
Yes.
And that's where I really got my administrative experience, was in Boston.
And what did that show you as working in Boston? How did that advance your understanding of education and urban children?
Well, and it's very interesting because Boston I had known as a kind of almost faraway place because I had grown up on the North Shore during busing. And so a lot of the images on television, a lot of what my parents experienced, particularly my mom, who was a social worker and then did corporate community relations after that, and her stories coming home were in some ways distant in that they were not as public, it was not forthright, but anytime, and you know this, anytime you are a black child and you are one of a few, that has an impact on, and shapes how you think. So coming into a Boston setting from a New York setting, I went to New York thinking, great, I'm in this majority black school district, everything's gonna be peachy and easy. That was not the case, no surprise. But then coming back to Boston, having the lens of what urban schools looked like and what they could look like,
yes,
was an interesting frame. And you know, Boston often thinks of itself as being this bastion of forward thinking, and you know, I came back with an equity lens that said, well, wait a minute, we have some work to do.
Yes.
And fortunately was able to work alongside other educators of a variety of backgrounds who felt the same way, but it was far more subtle. It wasn't as in your face.
Yes,
it was not necessarily a case of resources, but of will and belief. And I think that's when, up close and personal, I got to see, even if you have the resources, if you don't organize learning experiences, whether it's African American children, whether it's children whose first language is not English, any marginalized communities' children, if you do not enter teaching them with a firm belief in their capacity,
yes,
and with the fact that they, you know, the mindset that they actually deserve a high quality education, it doesn't matter how many resources you have in. And I was fortunate to work in Boston at a time,
yes,
where there was leadership that was willing to push.
Who saw that.
That's right.
That's
who saw
right.
That. Yeah.
Well, I'm a native Baltimorean.
Yes.
I want to put that out there.
Yes, which I think is wonderful.
And I'm back
great.
to Baltimore, so I'm really happy to be here. And so my question from a Baltimore perspective is,
Yes.
what brought you to Baltimore?
What brought me to Baltimore
Yes.
is Baltimore City Public Schools. You know, we were living, you know, I had just given birth to twins. I was 30 minutes away from my parents, who were helping with, you know, childcare and all that comes with that. But it was really the opportunity to come to Baltimore City, all that really represented. At that time, Andres Alonso had built a team, and we had gone to grad school together. And, you know, he had called before, and I was like, no, you know, I'm happy here. And I think it was just the opportunity of being able to work with a team that really wanted to make change for the better for young people in Baltimore City, and the fact that he had a team in place, so I had great colleagues to work with. That literally, and I tell folks all the time, it was Baltimore City schools that brought our family to Baltimore, and now my girls know no other place really is home. They tell people we are from Baltimore. They'll throw in New England every once in a while.
Yeah, but this is home.
This is home for them. This is home. They're Ravens fans, not Patriots fans.
Okay,
so
well,
you know, we got a little rub in the house.
Yes.
But no, they're Baltimoreans.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be a CEO here in Baltimore? It's a big, big job.
It is a big job, and you know, quite honestly, Denise, this is not, as I told you earlier, ever what I thought I'd be doing. I always saw myself as kind of outside of the system. I'm much more comfortable agitating the system, and the real reason I came back and did this was because of my love for the city and for the young people. And where the city was, where our young people were at the time of the Freddie Gray uprising, really reignited that. And no one likes to see a place that they know. And I'll never forget the images of Douglas High School and the young people pouring out into Mondawmin Mall and all of the confrontation. And I was working in DC at the time. And, when you're in the heart of policy making and advocacy work on a national level, I of course had colleagues who said, really, is that what it's like in Baltimore? And I said, no. I've walked the halls of that same high school and attended pep rallies. I've observed advanced placement classes. I have gone and watched music classes. And these young people are not the 10-second clip that the world keeps seeing circulate. That is not who they are.
Yes.
They are musicians, they are writers, they are poets. And yes, they have struggles like a lot of folks have struggles, but their potential has always been clear to me. And so I really came back more out of a desire to make sure that path was set. And I was frankly kind of concerned. I was like, oh my gosh, who's going to be doing this work?
Of course.
And this, a lot of leaders only step up because of the opportunity.
Yes.
Not because they're seeking it.
Exactly.
And this was one of those cases. I wasn't seeking it.
Well, I always believe there's no accident.
That's right.
Right?
Agreed.
You're meant to be here.
Agreed.
What would you say to the aspiring educator that's coming out of a doctoral program? We have Walden students that are adult learners. So they've been in the system, they're working in the system, but they're getting their degree so they can have more resources and more information that they can take back to their schools.
Yes.
So coming back to school as an educator with a degree, what would your advice be as they're entering or re-entering as scholar practitioners?
Yes.
Into our elementary schools, our middle schools, our high schools.
I would say, number one, begin to apply what you have learned in a classroom setting, even a practicum setting, to the everyday work of teaching and learning. And part of why I say that is because I think the void we have in education, definitely today and have often had, is marrying the research with the practice. And they are in a powerful position to demonstrate that. So that's number one. And the second piece would be in leading from your everyday experience and demonstrating excellence and the application of what you've learned in an everyday school or classroom experience. Begin to seek out those leadership opportunities. And I've noticed with kind of certain folks, they never see themselves as leading. Here in Baltimore City, what we are really proud of is really our efforts to reignite leadership from the classroom, both with our career teacher ladder, but also really how are we highlighting the work of master teachers who are yielding results in classrooms every day with young people. And I think that in re-entering, the more you share your story, the more you open up your classroom, because once you have excellence in your practice that is actually yielding results, any superintendent or CEO worth his or her salt is going to want to know what's going on in your classroom. And so if you start there, you sign up to help with district-wide learning. I was in a teacher's classroom just yesterday. An English teacher who had switched schools was doing great work, and I said to her, we really need you on our curriculum review committee. Make sure, and I told her, I said, send me an email. I'm going to pass it along because we're looking at new high school ELA curriculum. And I said, you need to be part of that.
Yes.
And she said, oh, really, me? And I said, yes, you.
Yes.
So I would encourage graduates equipped to not be afraid also.
Yes.
To share that expertise again, because once it's grounded in real results for young people, there are going to be very few people who are going to turn a blind eye to that.
That's wonderful. Those are wonderful tips.
Yeah.
And I hope that people are listening, that you have to have the courage to step out of your comfort zone.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
leadership frame that you're posing is such a great frame, too, for our children.
Good.
Because it has so many attributes. What comes along with leadership? It's self-determination. It's knowing that you have the confidence and you're worthy.
Absolutely.
I love that leadership frame.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Good. Good.
Black History Month.
Yes.
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 That's what we're here to celebrate. We're just starting the first week of February. What are you seeing in the schools around Baltimore? Are we doing anything different for Black History Month here? I know a lot of times we're looking at Black history heroes and sheroes, but that's
Yes.
not all that Black History Month is all about.
No, and I have to say, Denise, what's interesting is we have what I call a productive tension right now that I'm seeing, even as I've used social media from some of our teachers. And the productive tension is around what is the relationship between Black History Month with a focus on the contributions of African Americans and the everyday work we've been doing around curriculum, and the tension between making this something special or actually integrating it into just learning on an everyday basis.
Yes.
And so what you see here a lot of, for example, are teachers who say, I'm working every day to make sure that my young people know their history, and they are, particularly people who are teaching majority African American students. But at the same time, it is also a nice time to spotlight the need to do that.
Yes.
Particularly for all children, all young people need to know the contributions
That's right.
of African Americans. And I think one of the things here in Baltimore that I've really charged our team here to focus in on is how do we not drape our children in a narrative of brokenness, that their lives are only their trauma, right? That they are only what has happened to them, and not, to your earlier point, their ability to impact their world. And so, it's very tempting with some of Baltimore's challenges to fixate
Yes.
and to define young people by their struggle. And part of what we are really working to do is to show our young people the tradition and the history, frankly, of Black excellence, of immigrant excellence, of folks who, even though conditions were, virulently violent at times, the tradition of success that they actually come from and that they can own. It is not just a tradition of oppression and struggle. It is actually excellence in the face of hegemonic, attack. And the fact that our community has held together, that we have produced the leaders we have. So, I think of when my own three daughters, in one of our visits to the National African American History Museum, and we went by the letter that Benjamin Banneker wrote to Thomas Jefferson that was really asserting the humanity of African Americans even at that time. And I said to my girls, do you realize that he used language to actually highlight for a leader who was frankly very dark in understanding of that humanity of African Americans, but with the power of the written word, was able to do that. And so, one of the things I say is, when we look at, it's part of why we're focused on literacy, that yes, there are challenges, but we actually come from a very proud, resilient, gifted people. And I don't want our young people in Baltimore City to ever forget that, and to ever be so weighted down by the challenge that they don't realize the resiliency that lies within them. And then we as adults, our charge is to clear the path for them.
Yes.
And I say this oftentimes, I am so glad that our young people are mobilized with voice, but they actually are advocating at times for things they shouldn't have to advocate for. And we as adults have to step up. And you know that. We have a legacy in our community of elders paving the way for young people. So we really have to tap into that counter narrative. So we're actually riding that tension, but Black History Month is really a nice time for us to pause and reflect and say, where are we doing a good job with that?
That's right.
And where do we have further to go?
Exactly.
Where are we a little weaker
Very good.
in that area?
That's beautiful. And I feel the same. I feel like it's a moment of self-reflection, and that Black history is all of our history.
Yes.
So that's beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you. If there's one thing you want us to know about you and what you're trying to do this year, 2020, this is Walden's 50th year, so we're celebrating 50 years. Thank you. But what is it, 2020, what does this year mean for you?
I think 2020 for us, and I stated this in my welcome back address and charge to our school leaders back in August, and it has not changed. 2020 for us is a pivot point. It is a time where we are really asking ourselves, are we changing, and how are we changing the life trajectories for Baltimore's young people for the better? And we spent a lot of time talking about that, and I believe that that's our job. It is not to maintain status quo. It is trajectory changing, and that's what we have to be in for. And you know, we've taken some time to lay a strong foundation. We had some rebuilding in areas to do, but I am not in this for 2 to 3% a year more Baltimore City young people learning how to read. If we can't get fast chunks, beginning, like pace, to get 10% a year, more young people reading at the level they need to be, then we have some further readjustment to do. But that has been our focus. It is about trajectory changing. This is not about maintaining. This is not about incremental, low-level gain. It is about really taking on the broad swaths of work that are linked to really demonstrating through our practice that we believe young people are capable and they are worthy of our best, and our ability as adults and professionals to reflect on why they're not getting there. And it can't always be the external factors. I tell our folks all the time, we are working to get more social workers. We are working to get more community schools, to link families to mental health resources. But at the end of the day, we are still the singular institution in this community responsible primarily, not singular, but primarily, for making sure all young people know how to read well, write well, understand mathematics and the science of this world well as their history. That charge has not changed. And so that's what our charge is. That's where we are.
Thank you for being such a beautiful and mindful thought leader. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.